Thursday. There were angels all around her. She looked right at the formerly homeless man selling the One Step Away weekly newspaper. Richard was his name. He dutifully pointed to the pin on his coat and would ask for $1 in exchange for a copy of the paper. Or just a penny or two, if it was all they could spare. But it was obvious that his main agenda was to alert any who would listen that the 6th page featured his fictive short story, which he had written, about real life. She'd seen him every day for the last 2 weeks, making his rounds before the 11:15 train. She bought a copy of the paper the first time they met and asked him if he'd ever read Richard Wright's Native Son, or if he'd ever remarked the uncanny resemblance between himself and the author. The next evening, "How was your day, Richard?" "How you know my name?" he asked, seemingly violated, and, well, that was the end of that. Always either a half hour early or a few minutes late, she spent a lot of time at the institution that had provided her with both incredible mentorship and the creative license to collect as she might. And maybe for the fact that she went in unsure of what she was looking for, she never checked out anything at the library, or came out really with any answers at all. This was probably for the better, for it meant she had to work harder for any result that might actually reflect her face and her person. She pulled her hair out of the knot she kept it in while reading and scratched what her sister referred to as her kitchen. "I love your hair." Thoughtful and appreciative, she thanked the compliment and wondered if she were to shave her head like Anna did, what they might say of her then. Would she suddenly speak less profoundly? Would the presence she was only partially in control of diminish, and the praise come less often? Would she suddenly reflect a different home, demanding a sort of neo-reinvention, changing what she was made of in the first place? Her space, it was a jumble of ideas, a point of contention, a paradox of multilingual opinions. Papers sprawled on every surface, waiting with intent to be marked. Pallets of ready-made pigment tucked away for another moment. This was not their time. Her phone made a sound, and she remembered what was happening with the information she'd received only a day earlier. Hey, I'm actually going to be going out of town this weekend. See my dad, he's moving out of the country. And we're going to try and spend the rest of this time home. Have a good trip." And they hugged as she descended into the subway. See, for the energy that seemed to always surround her, drawn to something she was unaware of, but quite certain of from where it came. She was from a place that could really only be matched in chaos and turmoil by her Ringling Bros show gone completely awry, and the love and the passion house in her people, it exploded when they were all in the same place. She had tried to explain this to her friends at school, and they smiled and nodded with intrigue and alienation. The picture had been painted, the egg laid, and they realized that she was only a fraction of what she was. You had to be black boy in high school, right? She was often met with a no. Away from her friends, the school was really all they had in common. How could they ever know her if they were not allowed to know right? She was interestingly beautiful, only because they had no idea what made her. Charming, because they had no idea from where she came and where they came, though she glimpsed it in themselves and in F. Scott Fitzgerald. She was never to enter. She hadn't the inclination or the proper ticket. Friday. When the train arrived, she showed her driver's license for identification, and she stepped onto the car. She was in a double seat, which she liked and could stretch out. The week had been long, and the weekend promised to be longer. In transit, she wasn't anyone. neither here nor there, met only with curiosity and anxiety without the expectation, she would much more readily answer the question, "What are you?" to any who might wonder as they wandered together. Running in the rain toward the thumping car, the door flew open and her sister was belting, "Oh, baby, give me one more chance. Won't you please let me back in your heart now? Darling, I was blind to let you go. Now that I see you in her arms." Just like that, and to no one in particular. They embraced in their own fashion. "Who sings this?" she asked. Guess who?" She hated this game, so she picked up the phone and read the name, sat back into the seat, and she smiled. Even if they never spoke again, her sister would always be her best friend in the world. The fact of the matter is they spoke constantly, and they listened to the same music and heard the same melodies. She often wondered how that was, or how she could be sure of it anyway. But it was that spectacular intuition, and she decided to let it be. When she arrived home, her mama had waited up for her arrival. The baby sister let Pharaoh out of his crate, and he bolted for the pair as they said their late-night hello. She smiled, and in all her wit went up to bed. Sitting down, she looked around. Her artwork lined the walls, the biggest one reserved for portraits of the members of the home. And everyone was there, except for a picture of her own peach mother, or at least in the way which she wanted to see it. Her mother often felt ostracized, and she wondered how much this had to do with the fact that they looked completely different. It was wrong, but she couldn't help but make the comparison to her own experiences away at school. She frowned, a wrinkle coming between her eyes, and said, "I get so frustrated trying to paint pictures of faces that look nothing like the ones around me, except vaguely, for one. Can I help but wonder if I'm in the right place? I'll paint you one day, Maman." Light conversation often got heated at this time of night, so before it got too conflicted, she put the dog away and retired to the couch, falling asleep to the sounds of his whimpering. He hated missing out on the reunion. He hated sleeping behind bars, but most significantly, he hated cuddling of any sort. They were both walking contradictions. Saturday. They spent the next day together and alone, exploring their home with distinction. Hey, I found your ring on the floor underneath my bed," her brother said as he handed her the band of silver elephants. She examined a small circle in her palm, and she decided to believe that these creatures, that they were wise beyond measure, and that they wore their masks with pride. She admired them. "You are my door to all the rooms," she said. "Don't ever close." "I won't," he replied, as if he understood what she meant. For what felt like the first time in months, they were all at the table at the same time, forgetting what it felt like when she was gone. "When will you be home again?" they asked of each other. "I don't know," she replied. "Sometimes you can want something a whole lot, only to find out later that it wasn't what you needed at all." Her father's presence while he was absent was remarkable. It wasn't until recently that she had realized how much this juxtaposition had left an impression on her own attempts at understanding men. There had always been these strong women to guide her in nearly every avenue that she traveled, but only a few boys and only one man had left any real mark. Her father's stories had exhausted her and left a stain. Eventually, they get tired of listening to each other, at which point the kids knew it was time to clear the table. She chuckled to herself as she rinsed out the pot used to make fufu. She was such a terrible mélange. She possessed all of the best and all of the worst traits from both of her parents, making their relationship both affable and wildly dramatic. Her place as middlewoman, it was real there. As it was when both sides of the extended family would ogle at their different definitions of celebration. As it was when two friends would let their adolescent ideals resurface and fool around one time, then hand her the leftovers in an airtight container. As it was in her 9th grade English class when her teacher asked her to represent an entire race of people that she felt she could never really belong to in the first place, if in her opinion the repeated use of the word nigger in To Kill a Mockingbird offended African American people. And as it was when by herself, walking down the street to an unmarked point B, and in bed. This is home, and this is where I sleep.